You're listening to the Quit Your Job and Get Creative podcast, where we talk about quitting your unfulfilling job and pursuing your creative entrepreneurial dreams. My goal is to help you realize earning a living doing what you love is possible for you. You'll hear stories of women who have quit their 9-to-5 jobs and started their creative businesses. You'll learn how they did it, the ups and downs, and secrets to success. I believe that you are good enough and capable to live out your dreams. I'm your host, Jocelyn Clarkson. Now, let's get started. Welcome to another episode of Quit Your Job and Get Creative. I am Jocelyn Clarkson, your host, and I'm so excited for today's episode because we're going to be talking with Nichole Rairigh. She is the founder and CEO of the Apparel Agency. The Apparel Agency provides design development in the apparel industry. She has also started 2 different clothing brands for boys and girls, and let's hear her story today. Hi, Nichole. Thank you so much for coming.
Hey, Jocelyn. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I am so excited for today. And also, you drove down from Michigan. Is that where you're living right now?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for driving down. I know it was a long road, but I'm so happy that we got to meet today.
Yeah, likewise.
I like to start the podcast with the first question is, what did you want to be when you were a young girl?
When I grew up, I guess hindsight is 2020. So I think I wanted to be exactly what I am right now.
Okay. And what is that?
Well, okay, there were 2 versions of the story. One is charming. Initially, I was telling everyone I wanted to be a cashier at Meijer.
I love that.
It's a big chain. And the reason why, because eventually my parents were getting a little worried and they said, well, what's the reason for this? These aspirations that you have. And I said, well, don't you get to take all the money home at the end of the night? So I think it segues very well into that I was always thinking business, and I really enjoy, I guess you could call it economics. So I really enjoy making money, spending money, and the cycle of building, creating, people prospering.
Yeah.
So being an entrepreneur, I think, was always in my DNA.
Do you have family members that are in business or that are entrepreneurs? Like, where do you think you got this itch for entrepreneurship?
Well, that's an interesting question. Everyone in my family is a business owner. I can only think of my younger brother is a podiatrist, but he himself is going into purchasing his own practice. So, yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I grew up. I think mostly, though, I saw it. I was raised with my grandparents, and my grandfather, his family brought in the first carnival to the U.S.
Wow. Okay.
I think the first, they were among the first to bring in carnivals to the U.S. And he ran, he built his carnival business, and they had all of the contracts with the Michigan, Ohio, and then they expanded to Texas, their state fairs.
Wow.
So they had the Midway. So I grew up with celebrities on stage.
So you were able to
ones,
participate in these carnivals as you were growing up?
Yeah, I did. My first job was running the popcorn stand.
Did you keep the money? Did you take the money home?
I did. So the funniest part about that is that I think that's where the concept came from. So it was at that time was a cash business.
Right.
And so I think just seeing all that cash coming and going, because I was always on the back end and the trailers and whatnot. And then, my dad was given a job. My uncle, my grandpa gave everybody jobs on the carnival. And it was kind of I think everybody kind of got their taste for entrepreneurship there.
Wow.
Essentially.
That sounds like an amazing, as a young adult, or even as a kid when you were working there, to work in a carnival and get paid, and it's your family's business. That sounds like a dream come true.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I would go at the end of the night, close it all up, and I'd go into the cash trailer, and Joe would say, what do you want to make today? Yeah. And, it's also a measure of trust, and, because I felt like, oh my gosh, at that age, I think it was 13.
Yeah.
And I'd be I'm pushing it at $100, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And flip me a couple of 50s or so. So I think there's, I don't have mentality, but I do that a lot too when I hire, is that I really want people to tell me what they think their value is.
Right.
I don't want to assign that to them. And then, of course, there's a mutual agreement then. you hire and, when you take a job,
Yeah.
but I like to know what people think their value is, and then they hold
you
themselves accountable.
Yeah, you reverse engineer it, right? You were like, what do I want to make and how do I figure that out? So that's amazing. So you went from working the popcorn stand at your family's carnival, which sounds amazing. Tell me, at what point did you discover your creative talents? Because you're working in fashion now. So at what point did you realize that you were this creative person, or at least had an interest in fashion?
Oh, I had an interest in fashion. I can't remember when I didn't. I was always really interested in pattern, textile, combination of color. So I don't, and it was more so just seeing the bigger picture and seeing how things would come together and not being afraid to take risks.
Right.
So I wasn't always following the trend.
Okay.
So I think I was always pushing a little bit further, but I can't remember when I wasn't interested in fashion.
Right. So it was always something within you. Do you have anyone in your family that's in fashion?
Well, my mom, she was, so my grandfather's daughter, my mother was a manager at Gaetano. I remember Gaetano.
Okay.
No, wait, you're too young.
No, no, but it sounds awesome.
It was like if Shein was brick and mortar only.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So you actually went to Columbia, right? And you studied fashion. How did you, because are you originally from Chicago, Chicago area? Where are you originally from? Michigan.
Yeah.
So when it came time to go to college, you had this interest in fashion. You're like, no brainer, I'm going to go study fashion.
Yeah.
And how was that experience for you? Was it everything that you expected it to be?
I mean, I was a bit feisty, I would say. I had to kind of fight my way to my, creative education. My family wanted me to be more so on something logical.
A smart career path. Yeah.
Right. So it was always kind of like, okay, once you do this, then you can do that. And then I finally said, I'm going to just do it. And I went, I wanted to go to FIT in New York, and I actually went there for a summer and realized that I would have to kind of trash all my previous education and credit.
Okay.
They don't transfer credit.
Oh.
So I kind of came back to Columbia College in Chicago, finished up, and then actually I got pregnant and married my last semester of school, because I took a little bit longer to go through school. And so my senior thesis, I was pregnant.
Yeah. What did you focus your senior thesis on? Was it like women's wear, men's wear, children's wear?
Well, at the time I was sewing, I was deconstructing t-shirts. So this is 99? Okay. So, right? 2000? Yeah, no, 2000. I was doing this, like taking vintage t-shirts and like deconstructing them, and then also denim as well. And kind of got the buzz was going around, Chicago, and I was doing like reality TV was kind of becoming a thing. So I was like doing some, outfits for these reality.
That is so cool.
Well, because I worked in the bars too.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's not that hard to like know people when you're young in Chicago and moving around.
Right.
So I was doing that, and I did. I really enjoyed Columbia College, but I was it was like really in my, I had it in my head, I'm not going to be a pattern maker specifically. I'm not going to be a sewer specific. So I think I gave my teachers a little bit of help.
Right.
Because I was always like, well, I'm not going to be doing this. I need to know it, but I don't want to like perfect it.
Okay.
I felt like college was very Project Runway-ish, and in my mind it was, I'm going to hire all these people and I'm going to build a business,
right,
and hire these people and direct. And so that's where I kind of say like the winding path leads me. It's like it's almost like my inner being knew.
Right.
Even though I couldn't put a finger on it at the time.
So I want to focus on two big things that you said. The first one was that your family wanted you to get a more logical career choice. I call them smart career paths, like doctors, lawyers, bankers, finance, accountants, something concrete, something that maybe is a little bit more, math and science based. And I think a lot of our listeners, and even myself, my family, it wasn't that they actually flat out said you need to be a doctor, lawyer, or banker, but there is this, I come from immigrant parents. So there's this, almost like expectation of like being the best version of yourself and making them proud in order to justify your parents' sacrifices. And so I want to know at what point, like what would you say to other listeners that are struggling with, maybe it's not school, but it's their family, maybe their spouses
having this expectation of, are you really going to pursue a career or a business in, a creative business as opposed to, keeping your job? Because I think oftentimes the misconception is that a lot of these creative jobs are not well paid. And in the beginning, they may not be. But I think that if you, set them up well, you can make money off of them. So what would you say to people who are struggling with people in their family who are like, maybe that's not a good career. You're going to be broke your whole life if you go down this path?
Well, I mean, of course, families, most family anyway is well-intended. So I think as we're growing up and myself having, 18 and 19-year-old, I wouldn't want them to say that I'm wrong to my face. I'm really well-intended, but my family was not the most supportive. And they weren't that. There's a lot there.
Yeah.
It was a broken home and all those other things. But I think you have to follow your gut. And we're not born to have other people live through us or for us to live through others. Right. So I found that, I'm going to get a little bit, fill or deep or whatever, but it's kind of segues into my second career path. But if you're following your gut, if you're following your heart, you're going to get there in a more peaceful way. Right. And if you're not, you're still going to get there because it's your destiny. It's what you're supposed to do, but you're just going to get there with a rocky road.
Right.
So, and I got to a lot of milestones in my life that I knew predestined, but I was beat up along the way, and I beat myself up.
Right.
So I would just say that, nowadays, just me having younger kids that are at that age where they're starting to think about, what do I want to be? Where do I want to go? It's not up to me. I'm a parent, so I can answer that question from a parent's perspective. It is not up to me.
Right.
My job is to love them and to be there for them to my greatest capacity, and then to enjoy what they're doing and what they're figuring out and where they're. If you're someone who's struggling to please your parents, I think that, you should know from a parent's perspective that we just want you to be happy and fulfilled. And money that's the result of those things, the result of happiness, the result of honoring your true self. It's not the means by which you get there.
Yeah. I love that. I wish every parent thought like that. There are certain parents that are a little particular, so it makes it a little tougher. But no, I love what you said because it's true. It's really your life at the end of the day, right? And you're going to get there if that's your destiny. It's just a matter of like, are you going to follow your gut or are you going to live through someone else? You're eventually going to get there, but it's going to be rocky.
Yeah.
So another thing you mentioned was that, which I admire because when I first started my venture into fashion, I thought I had to do everything. That's how I started, right? I thought I had to know how to sew, how to make patterns, how to design, Illustrator, Photoshop, style, all of that.
Yeah.
And to hear you say that from the beginning, you were like, I just need to understand the process. I don't need to know how to do this. And I can just delegate. Like, first off, like, amazing. Because I think that's something that it doesn't come naturally to people.
Yeah.
And so I guess this idea of like you thinking like an entrepreneur from the beginning, what do you credit that to? Is it like your family and your experience, or do you think you were just born with that?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Well, maybe a little bit of laziness.
Working smart, right? You
smart,
said that,
not hard. Honoring other people's paths as well. When you honor your own path, part of that process is honoring others and recognizing that there are other people that are doing things better than you. Touching back to the family obligation and the feeling of obligation, we're programmed by our family, who's programmed by their family, who's programmed, and that equals evolution, genetics. You're meant to break that programming. You're not here as a daughter, as a son, as an heir to do the same thing.
Right.
You're here to break the program and to evolve. And so, what made me think process driven, and all these things, I don't know. I honestly don't know, other than, I didn't want to be the host, the chef, the server.
Right.
I just didn't want to be that. I knew that I had value in bringing it all together and organizing it in a particular way. And that's where where people can rely on me.
Yeah.
And then the rest has to be someone else.
Right. You connect the dots.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I went through the process. I started my own clothing line.
Yeah.
And I just was like, oh, wow. Yeah, this can't be Project Runway. Look at all these things.
Right.
And real money was on the table. But it was my education. That was my true learning curve.
Yeah.
And I learned what needed to happen in order for someone else to understand what I wanted from a design, because it's very subjective, right?
Right.
My idea of, amazing, it's different than yours. And someone sits down to kind of grab the baton on that idea and cut it, sew it, whatever. You have to communicate. You have to figure out a way to get them where you are. So, and that's that process.
Yeah. And I love that, because I think oftentimes, when I talk to friends who are aspiring entrepreneurs, there's still in that mentality that I have to do it all. And oftentimes that is what keeps them from starting, because they feel like they're not prepared enough. They don't know enough. And sometimes it's not about knowing everything and being perfect. It's about, okay, how do I get started? And if I don't have these skills, who has these skills? How can I find a person, and how can I get them to help me? Yeah. So I just wanted to emphasize that. So you graduate from Columbia, right? Now let's talk about into your career and how you started your businesses. What was your first job after Columbia? Did you start a business right after you graduated, or did you have like a job and then kind of start your business?
Well, funny enough, and this may help some, is I didn't officially graduate. I was, I believe, 1 or 2 credits shy, but because I was pregnant and I would have had to take summer courses, and then I was pregnant, getting married, and then having a baby in October, I thought to myself, I'll do those, gen eds. It was a history and like some half a point for science or something.
The boring stuff.
The stuff that didn't transfer over for some odd reason.
Yeah.
Well, then, I started a clothing line 2 years later, 3 years later. And then I was like, shoot, I need to go get that official degree. And they had changed the whole program.
No.
And I would have had to go to like 1 or 2 years of school to like meet all the credits.
No.
So we could say I graduated. I did.
We'll say you graduated.
I went to enough school to graduate, but I can't claim it official. But that's okay, because that also proves that you can do a whole lot with a piece of paper. But so after I graduated, quotation marks, I had Asher, my first child, and I started a clothing line because I thought it would be easy.
Okay. Gotcha.
I was like, I want to slow down. I'm not going to cut and sew. I'm just going to start a kids' clothing line. So I kind of applied the same thing I was doing before, but I hired sewers.
Mm-hmm.
So I was fortunate enough that my husband made money and was willing to invest in it, or at least let me, fly to New York and fly to trade shows. And that's really where that secondary learning began. And what I say is the foundation of the company I have now.
Right.
Building those relationships. I built a lot of really strong relationships with contractors in Chicago for cutting and sewing. And continue to expand my sourcing and material, and all of that kind of was the foundation for when I retired that line. Right. Then people were asking me to help them. And then I started to say, well, how can I help them?
Yeah.
And then I started processizing it and utilizing my resources and
right. So tell me how the idea for Asher came about, because did you study kids clothing in design? Okay. So was there a need, was there still this issue, I want to continue fashion? So what kind of triggered that idea?
Well, I started making her clothes the way I was making my own.
Okay.
And I lived in Wicker Park as Wicker Park was changing, and I had lived there prior to as well. And so again, I was just in the right place at the right time.
Right.
And boutiques were cropping up everywhere, and they wanted her clothes because I was shopping at them.
Right.
And, oh my gosh, look at her clothes. And so I started Asher's Room. And it was within a year in over 200 boutiques nationwide.
Wow. Yeah. How did you do that?
I don't even know.
Oh, God. That's insane. That's amazing.
And I was that entrepreneur that thought I had to do it myself. I went to school for it. I should know how to do this. I was I literally don't even think I was sleeping. I got a little studio down the street. I was cutting. I was sewing. I was patterning. And there was just no way, that was sustainable. And I was, mistakes were being made. And, I don't know. I just crammed a lot of learning into a small period.
You're a new mom. Wow. Yeah.
Ignorance is bliss.
So you closed Asher's Room. How did you decide? Because I know you also started another brand. You started A&M Clothing right around they merged. So at what point did that start, and at what point did Asher's Room end or close?
So then I have my second daughter, Macy.
Okay.
So
that explains that.
A&M Clothing. So there was a lot of kind of reference in that, Asher Macy. And then I paired up with friends with someone in my building. They were a media design company, and they were getting into website development, which totally ages me, but we're talking 2002 to 2004. So the internet was happening, and websites, it was unfathomable to a certain extent. So they actually were building out a website.
Okay.
And I didn't want it to be just one kid. Now I had two.
Right.
So I created A&M Clothing with this. And, not to go too far down a dark path, but my younger daughter had very serious medical complications.
Okay.
And that led to divorce. And then my husband was in real estate and 2008 and the crash and all these things and boom, boom, boom. And so then I retired the line because we just had too much. It was just too much.
It's gone on,
But it was successful and there was a lot going on, but I had to really think about, can I sustain it? And it wasn't even about financially sustaining it. It was mentally and emotionally. And I think it segues back to, I just knew that it was my calling.
Right.
That it got me where I was, but it wasn't where I wanted to be going forward. Having a wholesale retail business. I found myself not being happy with where the business was ushering me, which was at the front.
Right.
I'm not a front man.
Yeah.
So then I had to kind of check in with that. And then I gave myself some space to get divorced and deal with my daughter's medical complications. And within a year, I was freelancing, so to speak.
Okay.
People were contacting me.
Right. Because you're this teacher. They want to learn from you.
Patterns.
Yeah.
Can you help me? You were always on time. You always delivered. Where did you cut and sew? And so then I started saying, you know what? I need to work. Right. I just can't go and clock in.
Right.
So let me just give this a try and see if I can make it work.
Yeah.
So I started to reach out to factories that I made relationships with. One in particular was a good friend of mine through other avenues. We didn't. First factory I visited, actually, on my cut and sewed, and he said that his dad, his daddy was like, I can't do this, but go to this guy down the street. And then on went my path of crying and showing up with all this cut pieces that nobody wanted to touch. So anyway, he said, yeah, of course, Nick, come on by, post up here, let's figure this out. And so it really became this communal, community where they embraced me. They knew I needed to figure something out. And it wasn't even a question of trying to figure out how to get something out of it. They just were like, whatever you need, let's go. Let's make this happen. Yeah. And that's where the Apparel Agency was truly born, was out of that factory. And then eventually into my own space.
Right.
Yeah.
Let's talk email marketing for a second. Email marketing is an incredible form of marketing to your subscribers that allows you to directly contact them whenever you want, drive sales, and convert subscribers to buying customers. When I first started my clothing business, Swap and Strip, I was using MailChimp to send marketing emails to my subscribers. I quickly realized that MailChimp didn't have beautiful graphics. Their templates were very simple, and overall, the emails were ugly and not interesting. But luckily, I discovered Flowdesk. Flowdesk is an email marketing platform that helps small business owners like you design emails people love to get. They have beautiful email templates that make it easy for beginners to build their email list, engage their audiences, and convert subscribers into customers, all without a website. They have a simple to use drag and drop email builder that makes your emails look like you have an entire marketing team crafting and coding your emails. You can even insert GIFs and videos into your emails to up your email game. So if you're looking to increase your brand awareness and drive sales, Flowdesk is a must-have. Use my code in the show notes to get an entire year at 50% off with, listen to this, unlimited emails and unlimited subscribers. You heard that right. So sign up for Flowdesk today using my code in the show notes. Happy emailing. Now let's get back to the show.
Yeah, so I want to touch on, making those pivots in the business. I think oftentimes as entrepreneurs, you don't really know exactly where the business is going to take you, exactly what you want to do. So you just start, which I think is great sometimes to just start, because oftentimes if you overthink it, you don't start, right? So, and I know that with other entrepreneurs, and even myself, when you first start, building this business, and then you kind of realize, maybe I want to do something else. And I'm not so happy with this. And now I've kind of started this business, and there's a part of you that doesn't want to let it go. What would you say to those people that, because even me, sometimes I'm like, when I first started the clothing brand, it started off as a clothing rental company, and I opened it during the pandemic. So obviously that wasn't a good choice. No one needed to rent clothes for events because there were no events. But part of me was like, am I giving up on this dream? Because that's really how it started, clothing rental. Am I giving up on this dream? And it took me a while to have to pivot to just selling, which it wasn't much of a big pivot. But I think it's an example of like not wanting to let go because there's a part that feels like you failed. What would you say to entrepreneurs that have started a business per se, let's say, and doing something specific, but realizing that it's not for them, but they don't want to let that go because they feel like they're giving up on their baby, right? Their first business.
I mean, I would say they're being too hard on, the river doesn't apologize, right? Well,
I love that.
It just goes
Yeah.
around it. You
Right.
know what I mean? So I think you have to flow. And that's, again, what we're here to do is to flow. And, you only have this moment. I don't know anybody who can tell me that they went back or that they went forward and came back. So we're here right now, and you have to be here, ground yourself, and pat yourself on the back for where you're at. Because where you're at is a manifestation of where you wanted to be a day ago, a week ago, a year ago. So
Right.
congratulate yourself for getting there.
Yeah.
And then encourage yourself to be that person again for wherever you want to go.
Yeah.
It's like no apologies, no regrets, no, it doesn't, it's unnecessary. It's the road, those are the bumps,
Right.
so just smooth it out and say, okay, I'm here. I thought I'd want to be here. I'm here. Wow. That feels good. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now that I'm here, where do I want to go? Because we're
Right.
always forward moving. Always.
It's about evolving. The only
Yeah.
constant is change. So tell me.
Exactly.
So tell me about the apparel agency. So
Mhm.
it was almost like this organic way that it grew, right? And at what point were you like, okay, this is what I'm going to do? Because you were doing freelancing, right? Helping people. At what point did you decide, okay, this is going to be the business model. I'm going to name this what I'm doing, the
Yeah.
apparel agency.
Oh, I don't credit the name. I, in the very beginning, got connected with a client who had someone helping them. It was actually a large company. They had 2 girls helping them, and they contacted me. I can't remember which one did, but anyway, one of the girls started working with me,
Okay.
and she actually came up with the name. So yeah, so she was very creative in that, and there was, that time I thought I wanted a partner, and I thought that partnership mattered, but honestly, at that time, I didn't know how to partner. I was just struggling to survive
Right.
and to learn how to have that business. And so I can't take credit for the name, but I can take credit for like all of the conversations that led to the name.
Right.
I wanted to be this. I wanted to be a place
Right.
where people go and there's a connection and the bridge from your design ideas to the production floor, and that there's different departments and all the things that it is today. And she was actually in marketing and advertising. She's like, kind of like an agency.
Mhm.
And I'm like, yeah, it is. I'm like, it is. It's like an agency, but I don't want it to be known as like a branding agency because
Right.
we're not. We're
Right.
very niche focused. And she was like, no, it's like an apparel agency. And we were like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So yeah, that's how the name came about. And then it has continued to follow that path and ebb and flow and hit some logs, get stuck in the eddy. But I've just always decided I'm going to keep on going.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's been, how long has the apparel agency been, you know, on for? 13 years?
Yeah. I officially incorporated the parent company, Chicago Development and Manufacturing. That's how good I am at naming.
Right. Okay. Well, you know, it's straight to the point.
So that was in late 2010. And then the apparel agency was soon to follow.
Gotcha.
About
That's
6 months later.
Yeah. And you mentioned hitting logs, right? So over the course of 12, 13 years, have there been instances where you thought, this is it? Like, I have to, can you tell me about a recent, tell me about a big one or a recent one and how you
I think the most recent, like midlife, I'd say, for the company was transition from I am not an HR, like I'm really not a hardcore boss.
Right.
I really, really care deeply about people. I'm also in a small business.
Right.
So I don't have the bandwidth as larger companies, but I've had some amazing employees, people that have really put everything in because they believe in the company. This is where they want to be. They're happy to be in the industry that they went to school for. And so I do feel it's been a collective. But 2021 going into 2022 and everybody was unsettled. I think everybody really just energetically was kind of checking in. And so was I.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm over here trying to keep the company going for the clients and finding myself lacking the desire to continue as is.
Right.
And what happened was almost everyone that was there quit. But I have to be honest, it was either them quitting or me firing. And I don't like to fire.
Okay.
I'd so much rather somebody quit.
Easier.
And not for tax purposes.
Yeah.
Because then it's their choice, not mine. I don't want to be the reason why somebody is hurt or their family is affected or something like that. Unless there's a need for it, of course. But, and so I had to really check in on that and not get hurt feelings and not think that my company was failing or that I was a failure. I had those thoughts. But I had to check in, and it was because my gut was telling me the company's ready to transition into this new company, this new way, and you're already doing it, but you can't fathom how to transition from the old model to the new.
Right.
And so guess what? I kicked and screamed for 2 years, and then it happened.
Right.
No matter what.
Like cleaned house in order to you made space for it.
It's my destiny.
Yeah. Can you talk about this new way of doing the business?
Yeah. So right before the pandemic, we were looking into 3D pattern making software and going digital.
Okay.
And so I was, no, nothing's good enough yet. Right. You know, really stuck on pattern is the core of this. You know, you got to have it. It's got to be hand, then digitized, traditional manners. And then I started loosening up a little bit because more 3D was coming about and more advancements in true pattern technology, not just animation or design. My staff was really pushing this pattern making software called Browseware.
Okay.
We transitioned, then the pandemic hit. And I was like,
which is like digital. It's probably, you know, it's a good time though, right?
Well,
everything went digital.
That's the thing is that if you ground yourself and you stop worrying about where you should be and beating yourself up, you ground yourself and you just look at what's happening.
Right.
I started to connect the dots and I started to say, this was like perfect timing.
Wow. Yeah.
So I wanted to get out of our hand-holding business and model and into a more hands-off, hands-free, because at a certain point in your profession, when you reach a point where you have so much to offer that you don't want to just give it to one person at a time.
Yeah.
I want to share it with as many people as I can. I want to make it affordable, accessible. I want to put everything that people think we are so privileged to have as an agency. We're like, make it accessible and say, you can too. Here it is. And it's not that hard, and it's not that good, and you can afford it, and you can have your dream too.
Right.
So everyone I talk to is, I'm in the sales side of it. They're in a mode of dreaming. They're not, they're like, they want it so bad. They're dreaming. And I want to say, okay, it's not that hard here.
Right. Let's do it.
Yeah. But then I have to pay everybody.
Yeah. Right.
But now, so that's kind of that transition. We started going digital. We implemented this technology, which is amazing. And now we're actually partnering with them to create a software solution.
Wow. So like proprietary software solution. That's awesome, because no one else will have it, right?
No.
At least to begin with. That's amazing. It's crazy when you think about it, because same thing with COVID. It's like when it happened, it was such a scary moment because it's new, it's scary. But then when you look back, you know, some people were affected more than others, and it was negative, positive. But it's always important to look at the positive in what seems like a negative kind of situation. And I think when you're looking back at it now, you're like, wow, this is perfect. I was able to clean house and also be forced to kind of go digital, right?
Yeah.
So that's amazing. And I love hearing your story. But so we've talked about 3 different businesses that you've had in the Apparel Agency that you currently have. Do you have any other businesses? Is there something else that you're working on? Can you talk briefly about kind of what else you have going on?
So after, I got a little PTSD, divorce, sick kid, losing our house, everything. That I said, I'm never going to own a house. I'm going to always be nimble and free. So all the time I'm in Chicago raising my children, I rented. And right before the pandemic, that pandemic, oh my gosh. So right before that, I actually purchased a small cottage, my first property. Technically, my husband had purchased our homes before and whatever. So I purchased,
Awesome.
So I bought this cottage in Michigan. And I knew that I wasn't going to live there. And then the whole concept of Airbnb was getting, more and more. And again, divine interventions. Okay. So I run into an old high school friend. She has this rental business. She's selling it to another big company. And it just one thing leads to another. And now I have 3 properties in the area. And so now I guess I'm in real estate.
Wow. So are you renting out these properties?
Yeah, so it's interesting because I didn't want to just be like a landlord.
Right.
My grandfather was, my dad was, they did very well in that. I think real estate, is the one thing you do when you're succeeding somewhere else. So I wanted to make it experiential stays. So the cottage is more of an experience, very campy vibe.
I love that.
Brought my design, kind of my design thoughts into it, it up, and then there's still more to go. I think we purchased an inn, so a small, I've got an inn, not a hotel, but not a, so that we're renovating, and then we purchased a train station.
Oh my goodness! What? That's amazing.
I know. So I want it to be something interesting. So I laugh because I'm technically homeless. I do not have a home.
You have 3 properties.
I have 3 properties
with experiences.
But
that's amazing.
If they get rented, I'm calling people.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. How do you manage all of this? Because I think, well, being the apparel, managing or owning and running that's a full-time job in itself. And then you have your kids, and then you have all these other properties. How are you staying afloat?
Actually, question. The ride here I was yelling at my boyfriend. You're driving too fast. You're driving too slow. Oh my God. So I think I'm very typical in that way, but I just wake up and get at it.
Wow.
Yeah. And every night that I go to bed, I know this sounds really kind of goofy, but every night I go to bed, if I had 100 things on my list and I got 4 done, I just focus on how amazing I feel that I got the 4 done.
Yeah.
And the other 96 weren't meant to be today. And then you kind of, a week goes by and you're like, dang, I got through 60, and everything timed out perfectly.
Yeah.
So again, I just go back to being grateful for the process and, and just wake up and why be mad? When, it's just go. I chose this stuff.
Yeah.
So,
I definitely want to say that your way of thinking it's very inspirational, because I love your way of thinking, because I think it's something that a lot of entrepreneurs don't get to until they learn from their lessons and get through the hurdles. So I just, I admire the way you think, because I think part of it is, and again, I don't mean to say like you're born with it, because I know it's a skill that you have to hone in and you've learned from your own lessons. But, the way you think, I feel like entrepreneurship is instilled in you. And when I hear you talk, you talk about destiny, and I think listening to you, I think you are fulfilling your destiny. Like, you have this talent and this gift inside of you, and the way you think, you're like a visionary. And even when you talk about your properties, right? Like, you could have simply done Airbnb, which is what a lot of people do, but you added your own touch to it and you added the experience to it, which I think is phenomenal. So I like just admiring you right now. So, switching back to the listeners, right? The podcast really focuses on the stories of women like yours. And when I was listening to podcasts before, when I was thinking about starting a business and quitting my job, I really listened in to a lot of podcasts, and those podcasts inspired me. Hearing the other stories from women like you, hearing that like, oh, they actually went for it and they're living and breathing it. So why can't I? So what are some actionable steps? Let's say 2 actionable steps that you would give to women who are listening to this podcast. Maybe they're in the car right now, on their way to their jobs that they hate, they feel miserable, they feel stuck. They know that they want to start a business, but they don't know where to start, or they don't have they haven't had that like trigger to get them move forward. What would you say are some things that they can start doing that would lead them to that path of entrepreneurship, or at least exploring that?
Yeah. The first thing that I would say to somebody who's miserable, bored, and all those negative, whatever they are, is feeling that way. Mm-hmm. Because like energy attracts like it. So again, wherever you are and whatever it is that you want to do, get ground yourself, whether that's, in your mind, going out to the grass, however grounding makes sense to you, where you can connect to your grounding. Look at where you're at and honor it, and recognize that you're there for a reason, and that there has to be something about that job that is getting you to where you want to be. Right. And, just believing in that, because it's about believing in yourself. And so whenever you're in there and you're, applying all of these like faults to everything, oh, I can't stand here, this person's then you're just attracting all the reasons why. It's not necessary, because you're free. You're free to do what you want, when you want, where you want. And the only way to gain that freedom and to take that next step is to recognize that where you're at, you're free to. You're not being forced into where you're at. You can go get another job. You can do a lot of stuff. So I really feel nobody has to take my advice specific. But when I would get stuck in the rut, in the eddy, I would have to ground. Say like, wait a minute, like I'm my own eddy. I don't have anybody to blame, and I can get out. Yeah. I can get out. And that empowered me. And I was just like, everything, and just chill out and just move forward.
Right.
And so, it's like, that's the one thing. And I think there's like 10 things in one. It's the most important thing. Don't beat yourself up by being negative about where you're at.
Right.
Your boss isn't going home and saying, oh gosh, I know they're miserable. Your boss is going home thinking about themselves.
Right.
So don't beat yourself up for where you're at. Just start to take some logical steps and start to just imagine your life where you want it to be. I knew that I was going to buy a property, as an example. Everything that I've done in business, and I'm still doing, and I'm scared, and I get negative, and I get all kinds of crazy. But everything I'm doing in business, I've seen it before it happens. I see it. I visualize it. I feel it.
So you're big in manifestation, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah. So I feel like it does help, kind of, have you read the book, The Secret?
Yeah, actually, when I was in college, I watched the movie.
It's so good.
Yeah, it was a catalyst to where that book and where that information truly came from. And my spiritual journey, a lot having to do with having a sick child, rare condition, can do about it.
Right.
Just pushing and saying like, no, like miracles happen every day. And if there's something to do, I'm going to do it.
Right.
I'm just not going to let other people live through me, for me.
Right.
I'm not going to live through them and for them. So yeah, so I do have a lot of like spiritual stuff. I try not to like go deep into it, but that is what has led me to all of it.
I love that because I've done my own, manifestation can work in many different ways. But one thing that I like to do is every year at the end of the year, I like to illustrate. So like draw my dream life, how I want it to look like at the end of the year. So I draw my goals and what it is. And so I take a look at the picture and then I say, okay, what are some 3 things that I need to do to hit these goals? And it's so interesting looking back. And sometimes I get teary eyed when I like to see it, like, cause I've been doing this for about 5 years now. And looking at these drawings and seeing the things that I did accomplish, the things that I have now. Yeah. But then also realizing, that was funny. I thought I wanted this, but in reality, I got something better. Or in reality, that would have never worked. Or in reality, like, it's just kind of being able to capture like your current feelings, right? Because you mentioned your reality today is a manifestation or what you wanted either yesterday or the day before. So I think I think manifestation and kind of being in tune with what you want, I love that. And
that's the number 2 action item.
Right.
We agree. So
yeah.
The first is stop beating yourself up. Be nice to yourself and then manifest your future.
Yeah.
And, follow your gut and trust yourself. When you trust, I don't care if you call it God, if you call it Buddha, if you call it universe, but it is about having trust in the process of life. Trusting that you're meant to be where you know you want to be, and then everything letting it flow in that direction, and you don't have to force it or engineer it. It will go. Energy goes where energy flows.
Yes. Oh, I love that.
Yeah. I didn't make that.
We're gonna that's like cool. Yeah, no, I love that because it's true. Like I really think that once you commit, you start picking up signs, you start meeting people with almost like the universe unfolds for you, and all you have to do is commit. All you have to do is say, I'm going to do this, visualize it, and it happens.
And not to, bring it all back to that again, but honestly, that to me is also what my advice would be for young apparel entrepreneurs or design entrepreneurs. You cannot force the engineering of a product. So a lot of times they'll come to me and say, it has to be this, it has to be this, it has to be this, but you have to allow the things that are available and within your means, and you have to honor that process of development and recognize that the pivots along the way are going to get you to where you were meant to be. Right. And not to hold too tight. Somebody recently told me, I'm hiring a marketing manager. And he told me, Will, you need to write a business plan. And I was like, no.
Yeah.
No. I'll talk to you all day long about what's in my head, what I want for others, because a business is not about you. It's about service to others.
Yeah.
That is what a business is. Without others agreeing with what you have to offer and exchanging money as value for what you have to offer, you do not have a business.
Right.
So you have to think in the mind of what is my service to others? What is my product? What is my experience? If I were them, what would I want to feel when I'm buying or interacting? And it's just, I fail all the time in that and I forget, but that is truly the essence of that energetic exchange.
Yeah.
And so, put yourself in that and don't write a business plan because you get too stuck on it. It just gets too stuck.
And people think they need a business plan to start and then they never start.
Oh, I don't
have a business plan.
You know why you need a business plan? To deliver it to somebody else. So that they can judge you and tell you whether they agree with you or not.
Yeah.
So again, are you pleasing you?
Right.
Or are you pleasing someone else? I don't write business plans at all. I'm not trying to.
Right. Yeah. This is your business, and you'll pivot as you go. I love that.
As you go and trust yourself. I have a lot of like torn up papers with notes.
Yeah, I love that. Nichole, how can people find you if they want to follow your story, if they want to get to know more about your business, or even inquire about your services? How can the listeners find you?
theapparelagency.com.
Perfect. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nichole, for being on here. I really do hope that, the listeners take away from your story, your experience, your wisdom. And I really hope that they tune into their actual calling, and that they kind of go for it and just follow their dreams because you're living them. And, you're an example of it. You don't need to have the final answer when you start because you've moved on, you've pivoted. Now you're into properties and real estate, and who knows where that's going to take you.
You're never done.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Nichole. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you guys in the next episode.
Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you found this episode inspiring. I know getting started with your entrepreneurial journey can seem like a big task, but I am here to help you. I created a free guide with actionable steps on how to get started. Click on the link in the show notes and drop your name and email to have it delivered straight to your inbox. Have a beautiful day.